Forecast at 11.
February 10th, 1994.
If you didn't like lawyers before, wait till you see what we found. When not spending time at his luxury home, this attorney would write himself into his client's wills. This attorney won a big settlement for his paralyzed client and then took most of the money. And this lawyer took thousands of dollars and then didn't do any work.
I lost the lot.
She
You didn't
lost.
even file for me.
What about reimbursing her?
Tonight, Diane Sawyer exposes a system that too often protects unscrupulous lawyers.
It's not as bad as you think. It's worse.
These are the faces of war. Peter Jennings takes you to the marketplace in Sarajevo, scene of the deadliest attack yet, and perhaps the defining moment in this 22-month siege.
We can't begin to show you everything we saw here.
With the West now threatening airstrikes, we'll bring you the personal stories of people who have almost given up hope. Tonight, the war Americans can no longer ignore. He's the legendary columnist and humorist who makes millions of readers chuckle, lampooning the political antics in Washington and sticking it to president.
The one I liked the most was Nixon because he gave me Watergate. It made me a very rich man.
Tonight, Art Buchwald talks about the pain that shadows the laughter, a childhood spent in foster home after foster home, and a family secret that has haunted him for 68 years.
You lied every place you went when someone asked.
Yes. For the first time, I'm not lying, and I feel so much better. I don't have to lie to you, Sam.
Finally, where were you when the Beatles came to town?
Somehow I got in the middle of the three of them, and Paul McCartney put his arms around me, and I was like dumbfounded. I didn't know what to do.
30 years later, Primetime takes you back to that night, to the Ed Sullivan Show, and the debut that sparked a revolution in pop culture.
From ABC News, with anchors Diane Sawyer, Sam Donaldson, Chief Correspondent Chris Wallace, Judd Rose, Sylvia Chase, John Quinones, Renee Poussaint, and Peter Jennings in Sarajevo. This is Prime Time.
I'm a 35-year-old father, and I love my kids. Cereal.
Brave adults express their feelings about life and their love for Kellogg's Frosted Flakes.
Anxiety, embarrassment, guilt. As far as I'm concerned, it's all part of a complete breakfast.
Those crunchy flakes, that delicious frosting. Isn't it time you put it all out on the table?
I know, it's embarrassing, even a little childish. And that's just the box.
There's no denying it. Frosted Flakes have the taste adults have grown to love. They're great.
Maybe you didn't know that the Mazda 626 comes with the best basic warranty in its class. But the people of Flat Rock, Michigan stand behind the car they build. And that's why we can too.
Busy weekend? Wish there were 10 more of you? Whirlpool understands and designs washers that can help. A Whirlpool supercapacity washer holds clothes and more clothes, so you'll do fewer loads. And its simple controls are easy to use, so you can do loads of other things, even if there is only one of you. Because together, you and Whirlpool know how to make a home run.
As the amount you spend with your Discover card goes up, your interest rate goes down with the Smart Rate program. So use the Discover card, where the percentages are always in your favor. It pays to Discover.
Celebrate Valentine's a day early. If you've ever been in love, then this is the special for you. You'll laugh and you'll cry. Oh my God! Surprise proposals that change the lives of 6 couples. Hosted by Patrick Duffy and Suzanne Summers. Will you marry me? Then, Tom Selleck, Ted Danson, and Steve Guttenberg are all playing dad. Until a new guy moves in on mom.
You can't marry this guy. We gotta stall the wedding. You with us?
Yes.
The network TV premiere of 3 Men and a Little Lady after Will You Marry Me Sunday.
Prime Time. Now from Washington, Sam Donaldson.
Good evening and welcome. Diane is off tonight. We begin with a profession that's regularly attacked and often the butt of jokes. No, not politics and not journalism, but the legal profession.
While we know there are many ethical lawyers out there, it seems more and more we're hearing horror stories about lawyers who betray their clients' trust. Lawyers who use their position not to help others, but only to enrich themselves. Diane Sawyer decided to investigate to find out why so many lawyers today are struggling to salvage battered reputations. Even Hollywood has noted how far they've fallen.
Just a generation ago,
Who are you?
they stood for what was best in us. Henry Fonda as a young Abe Lincoln.
I'm your lawyer, ma'am.
What do we got here? What's the bottom line?
But this is the lawyer of the 1990s, that symbol of self-interest and greed. What happened to change our opinion of lawyers over the years? Why do so many people think lawyers are mostly out for themselves? Well, for one thing, the sheer numbers. There are more than twice as many lawyers today in the United States as there were in 1970. In fact, California alone has more lawyers than all of Japan. And there's a growing sense that no one is there to protect clients from the kind of thing their lawyers will do. Ask Diane Leach. After her aunt, Emerald Sully, died, Mrs. Leach was a little surprised to see a strange name as a beneficiary in the will, receiving all the AT&T stocks. It was her aunt's lawyer, James Gunderson.
Then it really was a big question mark. Well, why is he in the will? Why is he getting a large share of the will?
How large?
Probably about a third of the estate.
And amounting to about how much money?
About $225,000, I believe.
That's Mrs. Leach's attorney, Donald Feldstead. At first, they didn't know that Gunderson, who had established himself in a retirement community of 22,000 people, had shown up as a beneficiary in other wills and trusts he had drafted. In 1977, he got virtually all of Martin Fisher's $400,000 estate. In 1992, another client gave him a tax-free bequest in a trust of $3.5 million in stocks. And yet, American probate judges reviewed all the wills and didn't think anything was wrong. Mrs. Leach and her attorney are from Manitoba. He says in Canada, someone would have sounded an alarm.
When you, a lawyer, saw that a lawyer was this kind of beneficiary in a will, what's the first thing that goes through your mind?
Something smells.
And by the way, something else smelled about the will of Mrs. Sully. It had been drawn up just 4 months after she had been declared mentally incompetent. Papers filed with the court said she was suffering from senile dementia. And the person who filed these papers and asked to be her legal guardian was none other than that attorney, James Gunderson. We tried to talk to Gunderson. Here he is at his lavish home in San Juan Capistrano, California, with its rare bird aviary. But he turned down our request through his lawyer, citing pending litigation and denying any wrongdoing. In January, Gunderson resigned from the California bar rather than face disciplinary charges.
I think he is a crook.
For Jeffrey Hazard, who teaches legal ethics at Yale Law School, none of this comes as a surprise.
It's not as bad as you think. It's worse. They say there are only a few bad apples. That, of course, is not true. There are quite a few bad apples.
How many lawyers shouldn't be practicing?
Well, my guess would be probably 25%.
But so often the public doesn't find out about them until it's too late. For 12 years, clients of Harvey Meyerson of New York didn't know he was padding their bills by millions and millions of dollars. Cheating, for instance, for an $86,000 diamond ring and mink coats for girlfriends, and for himself, $1,600 for sunglasses and $1,500 for toupees. And some fellow lawyers who knew about the cheating did nothing. And then there was the case of Florida personal injury lawyer Philip Auerbach. Auerbach represented Marvin Williams after Williams was paralyzed when a truck rear-ended his car. The settlement for Williams included $1 million in cash, of which his lawyer took $750,000, leaving Williams with just $80,000 after expenses and a $35,000 a year annuity. In another case, Auerbach took a $1.2 million fee from the settlement of a brain-damaged child, finally provoking a judge to describe him as a miscreant and a thief. Today, Auerbach lives in this home in Boca Raton. We asked through his attorney if he would talk with us. He refused. We even approached his house and knocked on his door.
Mr. Auerbach here?
but we're told he was gone. And although he is denied any wrongdoing, Auerbach resigned from the bar, faced with charges of taking excessive fees. It seems for a lot of lawyers, padding the bill is a creative challenge.
Everything depends on billing. How many hours you spend even thinking about a client. I don't care if you're stuck in traffic or shaving or sitting on a park bench.
If you were trying to chivvy somebody, how would you do it? And believe me, some lawyer or other has figured out how to do it.
Professor Hazard says it's no wonder there's growing resentment about lawyers. We ask him, what can you do if you get taken? What about a malpractice suit?
The only time a lawyer will take a suit against another lawyer on a contingent fee is if there's a good deal of money in it.
What is a lot of money?
$100,000, $250,000.
And if a malpractice suit is out of reach for most people, wait until you hear about that other black hole of justice, the legal disciplinary system. You may not know it, but lawyers do have a system which they say allows them to police themselves. State and local disciplinary committees where clients can file complaints and sometimes get reimbursed from a special fund. Sounds great, right? Well, Primetime decided to take a closer look and found a system that is secret, slow, and shelters lawyers who are letting clients down.
Take lawyer Jose Rivera in Brooklyn, who came highly recommended for his work in civil rights. That's why all these clients went to him, like Anna Monselsi, who wanted to sue for unjust firing. She gave him $2,000 of her savings. Then, as months and years passed and he kept saying everything was going well, Mrs. Monselsi decided to go to the courthouse and check on the case herself.
And there was nothing in my file. They just had my name.
Nothing, not a piece of paper of any
Nothing. He
kind.
never filed nothing. I lost out everything.
What Monselsi didn't know then was that Essie Lowe had already filed a complaint against Jose Rivera for discontinuing her case without even telling her. Waldemar and Gita would file one too, saying Rivera did nothing for his $3,000 fee and even fell asleep during their meetings. And so did Evelyn Harrington, who handed over $2,000, all the money she had, when Rivera said he'd take her case, only to say later he changed his mind.
And here I was, minus $2,000, minus a job, minus an attorney with concern, and where am I to go at this point?
These people didn't know what Primetime would learn, that dozens of complaints were coming in about Rivera, while the system, supposed to help them, kept it secret for 4.5 years.
How do you think the system worked in the case of Jose Rivera?
Well, I think the system was very effective.
This is the man in charge of the Rivera investigation, Robert Strauss of the Lawyers' Grievance Committee in Brooklyn. He says under New York law, he has to keep complaints secret to protect the lawyer's reputation.
What about the rights of the people who are going to him in the 4.5 years that you know this mountain of complaints is building against him, and yet the client doesn't have a clue?
The records of our investigations have to remain confidential until an attorney is found to have engaged in misconduct.
So confidential that even when the committee had decided that Rivera's conduct was unethical and was about to suspend him, it still told no one. Rivera didn't mention it either. Instead, he told Dorothea Cornwell he would pray about her case after she gave him $1,000 just 23 days before he was suspended.
My money was a gift. Prayer or no prayer, he just took the money.
After Jose Rivera's suspension, it would take 3 more years to disbar him for what Strauss's report would say was a spree of misconduct over several years, including lying, stealing money, even taking money from a client under doctor's care, doing incalculable harm to his clients. And if you think the Rivera case took a long time, consider the case of Paul Merman, disbarred in 1991 for neglecting clients' personal injury cases. For 13 years, the committee sent him warning after warning, 7 in all, every one of them confidential.
Do you know how many years we're talking about during which this was going on? 13. Yet if I'd called in, could you have told me that?
No, I think it's pretty clear I wouldn't have been able to tell you.
Even with 7 disciplinary
Even with
actions?
70, the number is not what's significant.
How many cases do you have right now where there are multiple complaints against a lawyer?
I would say we probably have a group of 60 to 70 attorneys who are regular subjects of complaints.
I don't know why you shouldn't be able to call up and say, have there been any complaints filed against this person. I was on a committee that recommended it, but the bar, the ABA resisted it, and you get down to the most local bars, that is in the states, and they would fight it like tigers.
But slowness and secrecy aren't the only problems with the system. Some lawyers' committees simply dismiss as many as 90% of all complaints. The American Bar Association itself found that tens of thousands of legitimate complaints are dismissed each year. And one of the most common kinds, disputes about the fee, are usually dismissed outright. You don't have to tell that to Waldemar Anguita. After Jose Rivera padded the bill to fit Anguita's $3,000 advance fee, Anguita complained to the Bar Association.
They say, oh, if you only got to complain about the bill, we can't get into that.
So the bar dismissed your complaint?
Yes. They insulted me by saying that.
So Anguita showed them what can happen when an ordinary citizen takes the law and the lawyer into his own hands.
I went to small claims court, and I swept the floor with him, even though he was represented by a lawyer.
He had a lawyer?
Yes.
Did you have a lawyer?
No. I had a shopping bag full of evidence.
So you took him to court and won?
Won.
As your own lawyer? A
Yes.
better lawyer than he was with his other lawyer?
Right.
Anguita eventually was reimbursed half his fee, $1,500, by the New York Lawyers Fund. But his case is an exception. Professor Hazard says the rest of us have to hope for reform. First, he says, lawyers should lift the secrecy and then pay more to the disciplinary committees so that they have a lot of investigators with real teeth.
But you know how this looks from the outside. It looks as if lawyers are protecting each other.
Well, obviously, I think Mr. Rivera would disagree with you.
To be honest, I don't think it serves anybody.
Surprise! We found Jose Rivera, who now works for the New York City Council, and discovered he thinks the system let him down by not making him face his problems.
In my situation, some of the cases were kept in the committee, but not necessarily processed expeditiously so that warning lights could be given.
Rivera said he plans to try to get his license back and noted if the system were better, it could have helped him, saying his problems with his clients were due to his lack of focus.
But I'm a little puzzled because the kinds of things that went on don't seem to me to be about lack of focus. It seems to me to take quite a bit of focus to take money from clients and then not pursue their case.
No, I think not.
It's one thing for me to ask you questions, but it's quite another thing when you have clients out there who have things they want to ask you to.
Anna Monselsi and Waldemar Anguita. They told us for years they had wanted to ask their former lawyer something. Would he at least admit he took money he did not deserve?
You do agree to that with some other people, not us. You do agree with that, right? You admit that?
I believe that I did not take money undeserved. I believe that I took money as retainer to perform services. There were occasions, and I've acknowledged them, where given what I was going through, I did not fulfill all of my responsibilities to some of those clients, period.
So refund that.
What about Mrs. Monselsi, who could not get reimbursed, right? From the client reimbursement fund?
I lost a lot.
She
You
lost.
didn't even file for me.
What about reimbursing her?
I had a handicap. I lost my job.
I cannot address these situations in this way, in this manner, in this form. I can't do that.
Well, how can we do it?
I really cannot do that.
Well, how can we do it?
I cannot.
The answer is there's nothing Anna Monselsi can do. And Evelyn Harrington says you never get over it when your lawyer betrays your trust.
I know I'm a Christian person about forgiving. And I know that we are supposed to. But there's some crushing experiences that you have.
Can't forget.
You have to stay on your knees and pray.
For these people, and a lot of others like them, it was probably said best by Lana Turner.
If it's the last thing I do, I'll put you out of business. There must be a law even for lawyers.
By the way, in the wake of the Gunderson case, the lawyer who wrote himself into his client's wills, California passed a law prohibiting attorneys from doing what he did.
In a moment, living a nightmare. Children who face death every day.
people held hostage by the deadly snipers that ring their city. How far should the U.S. go to help?
Is there any reason that the Americans should send their sons and daughters here?
When Prime Time continues.
Today's tennis whites are tennis brights. But how do